want to welcome you to the Dallas Independent School District STEM Environmental Education Center virtual field trip. Very special welcome to all of the students who join us today in all the great schools. That's Hotchkiss, Tyche, Fieldstone, Reinhardt, Bishop Arts, Idaho, Salazar, Chavez, Cuellar, Humphrey Lee, Arcata STEM, Rosemont, Arthur Kramer, Gusick, Highland Meadows, Blair, Winnetka, which I attended many years ago, Virtual Academy, Sanger, Lipscomb, and Dunbar. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we appreciate it. And now I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Oh, okay. If you're watching and you have not joined us, please do so by going to www.tiny.cc/pk-2 registration. Sign up for us, please. We'd appreciate it. The weather today during this virtual field trip, students will observe and describe weather changes. Students will also observe and describe objects in the sky, such as clouds and the sun. Ms. Ramirez will do weather tools. Mr. Monroe will do seasons, clouds and the moon by Ms. Schramm, and Mr. Dominguez will tell you about the sun and the stars. You cannot ask us a question during this program, a verbal question, but you can go to www.tiny.cc/question-answer, fill out a question, send it in to us, and we will be glad to answer it for you. Now I'm going to stop.
Oh, I think you did stop sharing.
I've already stopped sharing my screen. Okay, now Ms. Ramirez is going to tell you about weather and weather tools.
Hello, my name is Ms. Ramirez, and in this segment, we're going to be learning all about how weather can change from day to day. So we're going to be a special scientist called a meteorologist. A meteorologist is a scientist that studies the weather. So as we go through this lesson, we'll be learning about the different weather tools and how they can be used to help us learn about the weather. Now, speaking of weather, weather just describes what it is like outside. So for example, is it sunny? Is it rainy? Is it windy? Or is it cloudy? Those are some examples of weather words. So what we're going to be doing today, we're going to go on a virtual walk of the Environmental Education Center, and I'm going to let you guys see if you can describe the weather. So today you guys are a meteorologist. Remember, the special scientist that studies the weather. So as you watch this video, be thinking about how can you describe the weather. Now, teachers, feel free if you would like to pause the video at this moment. You can allow the students time to think about what weather tools do they see. Also think about what information do those weather tools tell us about the weather. But see if you guys can name some of these weather tools and see if you can tell each other what they might do. Now, for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and continue on with the video. But again, teachers, feel free to pause if you would like time for discussion. So what we're going to do now, to get some of your wiggles out, I know you guys are little kids, we're going to do a virtual walking tour of the Environmental Center. So what we're going to be doing for the rest of the segment, you guys are going to stand and walk in place. Now, if your teacher says it's okay, you may stand. You're going to push your chair in. And as we explore virtually the Environmental Center, you guys are just going to walk in place. So walking in place means you're standing and you're staying in your same spot right by your chair. We're not going to travel around the classroom. We're just going to stay by our chair, and we are either going to walk or jog in place. And on the bottom of the screen, I have a little video of me where you guys can follow along as we are walking in place to virtually explore our center. So again, if your teacher says it's okay, you may join along with me. Otherwise, if your teacher wants you guys to stay in your seat, that's totally fine. You guys can still enjoy the video. So again, be thinking about, as you guys are walking in place and virtually exploring the center, be thinking about how can you describe the weather. So here's our first one. What is the weather like today? So hopefully you guys are walking in place. If you would like, you can throw your arms up in the air, pretend like you're reaching to that nice, wonderful sun. And hopefully you guys said that it is a sunny day that day. So hopefully you guys can pretend like you are reaching up to the sun, reach up nice and high. Here's our next one. What do you think the weather is like this day, and how do you know? And for this one, we're gonna have our windmill arms. So if you look at the picture of me on the bottom, you can see I'm moving my arms in a big circle. So that thing that you see in the video is called a windmill. And because it's moving so fast, we know it is a very windy day. So hopefully you guys have some big windmill arms moving as you guys are walking virtually with us. So you guys can continue on with just a slow walk. Again, here's some more of our science tools from earlier. So our first science tool is a windsock. It tells us how windy it is outside, and that happened to be a windy day. You can see that windsock moving as well as the wind chime. This is a thermometer. It tells us the temperature. So it tells us if it is hot or cold. And it happened to be 44 degrees that day. It was rather cold. Our next science tool is this one, and it's called a rain gauge. It tells us how much rain we get. Now notice there's no rain or water inside the rain gauge that day, so there was no rain that day. Now, of course, we know the wind is blowing. Hopefully you can hear it through the video, but we also see the wind chime and the leaves on the trees moving. It was a very windy day that day. Hopefully you guys are still joining us with your little walk-in place. You see our little work cat named WC. Think about how does the weather affect our plants and animals? Keeps them nice and warm when it's really cold outside. Think about what you wear when it's cold outside. We have a very rainy day here. Hopefully you can hear the rain. Because it's raining, why don't you guys jog in place? I know when it's raining outside, you probably don't want to walk. So you guys can jog in place. This is a very cloudy and rainy day. So you can jog faster in place, pretend like you're trying to get out of that rain. That was one of our ponds that was beginning to fill up with the rainwater. Again, here's our science tool, the thermometer. So what do you think this thermometer is telling us about the weather? We can read that it is 26 degrees Fahrenheit. That is below freezing. So do you think it is hot or cold that day? Hopefully you guys said it was super cold that day. It was so cold that water actually froze. So water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Here you see our pond. Look what happened to the water. It turned to solid ice. So when it's super cold outside, the water freezes. You can see the leaves and the stick that froze in the water. Very cold morning that day. Now that was actually our duck pond. So do you guys think the ducks had water to swim in that day? Probably not. So there's a couple of our ducks running around. Their duck pond froze. And normally when it's cold outside, I don't like to walk, I like to jog. So hopefully you guys are still able to keep up your jogging in place. Now here's some of our farm animals. These are some little pigs, and you'll see some little goats earlier. Think about how does the weather affect our farm animals? What do you think happened to their water? So there's Gemma and Benji are the two goats. But look what happened to their water. It is solid. So the top part of the water froze and the animals couldn't drink their water. So you have to go out there in the mornings and break the ice so that the animals can get to the water beneath. And in just a little bit, you'll see that I think one of the piggies was super thirsty because as soon as I cracked that hard ice, he started to drink. And now he's so excited to be getting some water. So remember, when it's super cold outside, when it reaches 32 degrees Fahrenheit or below, water will freeze. It will turn to ice. So that top part of his water bowl was a chunk of ice. Think about what happens when you guys put water in the freezer. It turns to ice, and that is how we get ice cubes. You see those big chunks of ice? So thank you guys for joining us with our little virtual walk. You guys can stop walking in place. You can take a seat right inside your chair. And that's all I have for you guys today on weather here at the EEC. We're going to give it back to Mr. Broughton to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. And we did have a question. What is the most popular weather tool? And I think without a doubt, the most popular weather tool is a thermometer. We all use a thermometer to tell how cold it is or how hot it is. We use that instrument most of the time. And now I am going to, now Mr. Monroe is going to tell you all about seasons.
Okay, students, good afternoon. My name is Mr. Monroe, and we're going to learn about seasons. That word seasons, it describes, I guess, certain times of the year when we kind of have the weather that we expect to happen during that time of the year. And well, I know there's times of the year when it's really hot. There's times of the year when it's just so-so, it's warm. There's times of the year when the temperature cools down, and it's kind of cool. And then there's a time of the year that it's really, really cold. And you know what? While I'm going through my presentation with you, while you're with me, I want you to take some things into consideration. I want you to think about some things. First of all, we know that there are seasons that have names. There's a season that we call fall. So I want you to try to remember, after we go through the presentation, what season comes after fall. Also, when I start giving you descriptions of what's happening during each season, I want you to pick out your favorite season. Now, I have a hard time picking out my favorite season because I think I've got two. They are tied with each other. I like both of them the same, but I'm not going to delay in time because I only got so much time with you. I'm going to get started by sharing my screen with you and starting the presentation. So bear with me. The 4 seasons, that tells us right there that there are actually 4 times of the year when we can kind of get an idea of what the weather is going to be. And not just the weather, it also, those seasons will tell us that, man, the amount of daylight or the amount of hours that we will have the sun. So let's get started. Okay, here we go. You know, what is the season? Well, I try to describe that, but this will even help you more. A season is one of 4 periods in a year. Each season lasts about 3 months. Well, that's roughly 90 days. In each season, there are changes in temperature, how hot and cold it is, and the weather, and the length of daylight, which is very important to everyone that lives on our planet, even the animals. Why do we have seasons? Why do we have those different times of the year when certain weather patterns come in? Well, basically it's caused by the Earth's position in relationship or relation to the sun. We know that the sun is the source of heat and light energy for our planet. And so our planet kind of has a tilt to it at an angle. It doesn't sit straight up as it is moving around the sun. So there are times when locations on our planet may be tilted close to the sun, and there are times when it may be tilted away from the sun, okay? And so basically it depends on, as the Earth moves around the sun, it does move that tilt. Sometimes it can be closer and sometimes it can be further away. And that allows for the heating, uneven heating that creates our season. So why? Some places are close to the center of our Earth, near the equator. Now, that word equator describes a very special line that separates the top half from the bottom half of our planet. Now, it's an imaginary line that actually says that's the top half, that's the bottom half. Well, locations that are close to that equator, they don't really tilt that much. So guess what happens? They really don't have a season. And that's because these places do not move closer or further away from the sun. They basically stay the same distance. Because of this, these places stay very warm all year round. And you might say that about the top part and the bottom part of our planet, because they don't get a lot of the sun's light and heat energy either. I mean, it's constant. So it stays there, cold there all the time. What are the four seasons? Well, there's autumn, winter, spring, and summer. And in these images, you can see, you can about pick out, well, I think right here, this would be spring, don't you? How about over here? I think this is summer. And up here, they built a snowman. I think that's winter. And I see right here, looks like they're gathering leaves, piling up leaves, raking leaves. So you know what? Sometimes we refer to autumn as actually fall, simply because the leaves at that time will start falling from the tree. Okay, so autumn can also be called fall. During this time, during autumn, the leaves turn colors of red, yellow, orange, and brown. It can be very colorful. I know sometimes when it's fall out here at the Environmental Ed Center and we look over to the Post Oak Preserve, you will see a lot of leaves that are showing those colors, and it kind of livens up the forest. The weather begins to turn colder in the autumn or fall, and that's a great relief because our summers here in North Texas are really, really warm and hot. And so a lot of people look forward to that season. I know I do. That's when the air temperature is beginning to cool down a little bit. Now, when winter comes, wow, winter is a different story. I noticed that when winter comes, it gets dark around 5 o'clock in the evening. And that's because it is the coldest time of the year and we don't get as much sunlight during the day as we would in any of the other seasons. In fact, they say during the month of December, in fact, December the 21st, that is considered the shortest day of the year. And on that day, we have less sunlight than any other day. Snow falls in the winter. Now, we don't get a lot of snow here in North Texas, but where I'm originally from in northwestern Oklahoma, we did get a lot of snow. So we do get it every once in a while. You know, ponds and lakes freeze in the winter. And Mr. Ramirez showed you our pond. It did have some ice on it, and that's because we have freezing temperatures. So what does that tell you? We're in winter. Christmas is also in winter. And I know that's a lot of you students' favorite holiday. You're out for winter break, and it's a giving time. It has a lot of meaning. It is a very special holiday. And it happens in winter. After winter ends, then we move into the next season of spring. And that's a very special season. That's the other season that I like, simply because it's not too hot and it's not too cold. Spring, actually, during that time, we are supposed to get a lot of rain. And I hope this spring we get a lot of rain because we need some rain right now. So we got that to look forward to. And during the time that we're getting that rain, flowers begin to grow. And I often refer to spring as the growing season because plants and trees they begin to wake up. The leaves begin to grow on the trees at that time. And of course, you already know that flowers are going to start growing. The weather starts to get warmer. And just like I said before, it's not too hot and it's definitely probably not too cold. It's just very, very pleasant. And then we move into the summer. Now, summer is considered to be the warmest time of the year. I would probably change that word warmest into the word hottest, because I feel like where we live in North Texas, we get some very hot days. So I would consider it the hottest time of the year. The water gets warm, so you guys can start going swimming. And there is no school unless you end up going to summer school. And that's a good thing. We get a little vacation. And summer is vacation time. Now, there are a couple of activities I want you guys to kind of look at. Maybe your teacher will have you do these. Might ask you, what are some clothes that we would wear during each season? And be able to say why. Probably based on whatever kind of weather is going to be happening in that season. Also, you might want to draw a picture of things that occur in each season. In which season is Halloween? You know, try to figure that out. Do a little research maybe. Which season does Easter happen? And which season does Thanksgiving happen in? Now, this last one, Remembrance Day, I'd have to do a little research myself to find out what season Remembrance Day falls into. Okay, guys. Now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I've got a couple of little friends I'm going to get out. We're going to talk about seasons and how seasons affect them. But you know what? Before I do that, I want to share some artwork with you. I had a grandchild of mine do this artwork. And I gave her the pattern of the tree, and the patterns that I gave were small like this. And I asked her to draw me some trees and fix those trees the way that they would look in each season. And this is what she did. She started out with spring. And of course, I told her in springtime, you know, the trees don't have a lot of leaves, but they will start putting on blossoms, white and pink flowers. So she did her best. She did a pretty good job. And then on this one, you know, in the summer, the trees are full of green leaves. Some of them big, some of them small leaves, but they have green leaves. So she did this one representing the summer. Looks pretty good. And then this one here, she did this one to represent autumn or fall. Remember when I said that the leaves of those trees, leaves of the trees during that time or during that season are going to be orange and yellow and red, beautiful leaves, and then they start falling to the ground. Well, she did this one here to represent autumn and fall. And then once all the leaves fall off and there are no more leaves on the tree, probably the north wind coming was so strong it blew the rest of them off and they all laid on the ground here. That represents winter. She did a pretty good job. I think she did. Now, talking about animals that are affected by seasons. Well, I got a little animal that if you guys were here today and we were taking a walk into the Post Oak Preserve, well, we probably wouldn't see one of these. Because what season are we in now? We're in winter. And this morning, it was like 31 degrees. That was below freezing when I left home. Well, you know what? The little three-toed box turtles that live in our Post Oak Preserve, they belong to a family of organisms or animals called reptiles. And reptiles don't tolerate the cold very much. They are cold-blooded. So what they do when it's winter, they do like a bear. They will find a place to hide, maybe in the ground, and they go into a deep sleep that we call hibernating. So that's what happens to reptiles during the season of winter if they're out in nature. They will find a place where they can go into a deep sleep or hibernate. When will they come out? Well, they will come out when things begin to warm up in the season of spring. So you see, this just keeps going round and round. Spring, summer, fall, and winter. And then from winter, we go to spring, summer, fall, and winter. It just keeps repeating itself. And so Teresa the box turtle, if she was out in the woods, she would be waking up probably sometime in the month of March, okay? I've got another little animal here too. It's not a reptile, but this is Hoppy Jr. Now, Hoppy Jr. is a bullfrog. This is a young bullfrog. Hoppy Sr., I used to have this large bullfrog, and he was about 3 times this guy's size. But listen, Hoppy Jr., if he lived around the pond right now, do you think we would see him? He's considered to be an amphibian, and they don't tolerate the cold very well either. So Hoppy Jr., if he was out around our pond right now, because it was below freezing this morning and we're in the season of winter, guess what he would be doing? The same thing that Teresa the box turtle would be doing, sleeping in a deep sleep, hibernating until the season of spring. And then when spring comes, oh, Hoppy Jr., he would be out very active looking for some food. Well, guys, I have run out of time, so hopefully I've been able to help you understand a little bit about seasons and what seasons mean. I want you guys to have a good day the rest of the day, and I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Gorman. So if any of you have any questions, I bet he can answer them for you.
Thank you, Mr. Monroe. All about the seasons. Now, I know Mr. Monroe, he has an activity he likes to do in the fall. And so that's why he likes fall so much. And he also likes to do a little fishing in the spring. So that's one of his 2 favorites. My favorite, without a doubt, just the spring. I like the fall, but the spring, that old cold winter's gone. Looking for a little warm sunshine. That's my favorite. I don't know. What is your favorite? Okay, thank you. Now, Miss Schramm is going to do clouds and moon.
Good afternoon, everybody. Excuse me. I'm Miss Schramm, and we are talking all about the clouds and the moon. So let me get this going. Okay. So at the end of my little section, you'll be able to observe, describe, and illustrate objects in the sky, such as the clouds and the moon. So first, we're going to talk about clouds. Now, what are clouds made of? Oops. So what are clouds? A cloud is made up of millions of tiny little water droplets or ice crystals floating together in the air. So we can see the water in the sky forms clouds. And depending on how much water and how high in the sky, that changes what type of clouds we are seeing. So there's going to be 4 different types of clouds we talk about today. There are much, much more, but in pre-K and kindergarten, we're just going to talk about these 4. These are the main, most important ones. Okay, so the first kind, like when you draw a cloud in class or at home, when you draw those big, round, fluffy clouds that look like a big ball of cotton candy, those are called cumulus clouds. They're middle in the sky. They're fluffy and puffy, and you see them when there's nice weather. So you might see a few floating by, but you've got a nice blue sky with some cumulus clouds spread out. And like I said, those are middle height. Now, cumulus clouds are a lot of fun because sometimes if you use your imagination, you can see different shapes, right? So I found these 2 pictures from online, and this one is a heart-shaped cloud, and that one I'm pretty sure happened naturally. The other one is a bunny, but I don't think that happened in nature. I think someone photoshopped that one a little bit so we could see a bunny. But if you use your imagination, just like when you look at the stars at night, sometimes in the clouds you could see different shapes. So this artist took pictures of the sky and then probably used their tablet or their iPad to sketch on top some little cartoon animals that they saw. So this one, they thought they saw a kitty cat, and the other one, it looks like they found a short little dog. So if you use your imaginations when you go outside, you can probably see different shapes and animals in the clouds too. All right. Boop. Next is cirrus clouds. So I told you cumulus looks like the big balls of cotton candy. Cirrus clouds look like when you take some off to share with your friend, or you take some off to pop in your mouth. It looks like that shredded cotton candy. It's feathery. These are higher up in the sky. There's less because they're not as thick, right? So they're white and wispy and feathery. And you see these also in nice weather. So you'll see these high up in the sky and plenty of blue. And usually these will be in nice weather. So both those clouds so far have been white colored clouds. That means they're not very dense with water. So they're still white. When they get more full, they turn darker like gray. So the gray clouds mean there's more water and there's more likely going to be some rain. So stratus clouds are lower in the sky. Think about it. They're probably heavier. They're very full of water. They fill up the whole sky. You can't see very much blue at all. You can't see like any blue. So they're filling up the sky with gray like a blanket. And these happen when there's going to be cloudy weather. So if you see a lot of stratus clouds like this picture, you might be thinking that it might rain a little bit. Maybe parts of the day you're going to get a little sprinkle of rain, a little drizzle of rain. And it's going to be cloudy weather. Then my favorite, whoop, not that, is the cumulonimbus. So these are big, tall, and wide clouds. So these clouds are not low in the sky, medium, or high. They're all three. So these clouds are huge. They'll fill up the sky. They can be dark. And depending on what kind of storms you're going to experience, they could be different colors, like different dark colors, kind of greenish, kind of like darkish blue, dark gray, almost black. So cumulonimbus clouds, of course, means you're going to have stormy weather. So you could see in this picture, you could see lightning. If you were standing in this field when this picture was taken, you could probably hear thunder. You might feel some rain starting to fall. So these clouds mean you got to get inside because there's going to be a storm. And they're my favorite because I like summer storms. Okay, next, at nighttime, mostly, sometimes you can see the moon during the day, but mainly you want to observe the moon at night. So we're going to talk a little bit about phases of the moon, because if you go out every night for a month, you would see something different every night. And over time, throughout the month, the appearance of the moon changes. The moon itself stays the same, but what you can see of the moon changes. So let's see a little more of what I'm talking about. So we know that we are out in space, and the moon is like our little sister. She's following us around. So she's circling around the moon. It's called, around the Earth. That's called orbiting. And while at the same time, we are orbiting around the sun. So we are circling around there. So the moon is kind of like our little sister because she's along for the ride, following, right? So depending on where the moon is in relation to the Earth changes how much we can see of the moon. What on earth does that mean, Ms. Rapp? Well, the sunlight is coming from the sun, like those little arrows. The sun rays are hitting the moon. So you can see on this little moon, half of it is white because it's lit up by the sun's rays. Then the other half is dark. Same thing with the Earth. Half of it is light because they're having daytime. Then half of the Earth is dark because they're having nighttime. So depending on where the moon is how much of the moon we can see. So let's see what that looks like. On a full moon, we can see the moon full and bright, a big full circle. We can see the whole face of the moon. So it looks like a big bright circle. And we know it's being illuminated by the sun. A lot of kids think that the moon makes its own light, but just like we saw on the last slide, the sun is shining onto the moon and reflecting, kind of like a big mirror. So we can see that the moon is lit up. So if you go outside on January 17th with your grown-up, that's next Monday night, you'll be able to see a full moon. So our next one here is January 17th. Then if you were to keep going outside night after night, you would notice the moon got darker. So only part of the moon is visible. So this is called a quarter moon. We can only see part of the face of the moon, and the other is covered in darkness, a shadow. So we could see a quarter moon here. And if you kept going outside, you would start to see a crescent moon. So you can see that shadow is growing and covering more and more of the moon. And eventually, if you kept going outside until January 31st, you would see a new moon. Only a sliver of the moon is lit up. So it's really hard to see. Only a little bit is there. So it's like a big pattern. It's called the phases of the moon. So it's a lunar cycle. Every month, it goes through these phases. So we see a new moon where it's all dark, and slowly it becomes more illuminated. The sun is hitting the moon, and we can see more and more until it's a full moon. And then all of a sudden, it starts to get darker and darker again until it's back to a new moon and ready for a new month. All right, so that is all I have for the moon. But I did want to show you a quick craft that you can try at school or at home. And this is just to remember the different types of clouds. So I had fun making these. You just need a couple cotton balls and a piece of paper and a little bit of Elmer's glue, the runny glue. So I made some cumulus clouds, the big and fluffy ones. Then I made some cirrus clouds, the feathery, thin ones. Then the cumulonimbus, which was my favorite, the big, tall, wide, dark clouds for storms. And then the stratus clouds that are like a gray blanket. So that's just a fun idea to help you remember your types of clouds. That's all I have for you, and I can't wait to see you next time.
Thank you, Ms. Ram. And a question came in, do clouds ever touch the ground? And yes, they do, and we have a name for them too, and it's called fog, F-O-G. That's and I ran through some heavy fog this morning as I crossed the Trinity River coming to work. And now Mr. Dominguez is going to tell us about the stars and the sun.
Buenos días, amigos. Hoy el tema es el sol. Aquí estoy afuera en nuestro centro de ciencia disfrutando a un día muy soleado. Hoy vamos a hablar de los diferentes tipos de energía que nos da nuestro sol. Hey friends, today's topic is the sun. As you can see, I'm outside with very clear skies. It's a very sunny day. And today we are going to be talking about the different forms of energy that the sun provides us with. I love a very sunny day. Do you? It's better than a rainy day, I think. As you can see, our sun is a very, very, very bright object. Why do you think that is? What other bright objects can you think of that are found in the sky? Maybe a star? Is the sun a star? Well, we're going to talk about that today. I hope you guys enjoy this very sunny virtual field trip. Okay, amigos. Primero, quiero responder la pregunta, ¿es nuestro sol una estrella? Aquí tenemos un modelo de nuestro sistema solar. Nuestro sistema solar consiste de nuestros 8 planetas. Nosotros vivimos en un planeta. Nuestro planeta se llama el planeta Tierra. Aquí estamos aquí. Esta bola azul es nuestro hogar, el planeta Tierra. Y aquí, en el centro de nuestro sistema solar, tenemos el Sol. Y el Sol sí es una estrella. Es la estrella más cercana a nuestro planeta Tierra. Hay trillones y trillones de estrellas en nuestro universo y las podemos ver cada noche, pero el Sol es la estrella que nos da la luz y el calor que recibimos aquí en nuestro planeta Tierra. All right, friends. So first, I want to answer the question, is the sun a star? Here we have a model of our solar system. The solar system consists of 8 planets, including our own planet Earth. This is where we live on this blue ball. Right here, the blue is the ocean, and you might be able to see the green and the brown. That's the land. We live on this planet. And to answer the question, yes, our sun is most definitely a star, and it's the closest star to our wonderful planet Earth. There's trillions of stars in the universe, but it is the sun, the star that is closest to us, that gives us the light and the heat that we feel every day. El calor del sol es muy importante para animales como los reptiles. Este reptil o esta tortuga está comiendo y sin el calor del sol no va a poder digerir su comida. Pero lo bueno es que en este día sí hubo mucho calor. So guys, some animals like reptiles require the heat from the sun to properly digest their food. So luckily on this day, this turtle, this redfoot tortoise, his name is Teddy by the way, was able to eat his food and digest it because he had access to the sun's heat, a form of energy that we get from our wonderful sun. Even though mammals like these goats and these pigs can produce their own heat, it is still very important that they receive that heat energy from the sun. They also need heat energy to properly have their bodies function. So when it's cold, you know that you slow down, and if it's cold for these animals, they'll slow down too. But the sun also provides us with another form of energy that is incredibly important. So right now I'm walking to our garden to show you some of the living things that definitely not only need heat energy, but also need the sun's light. Light energy is incredibly important to plants. And these plants would not be able to grow without the sun. The sun provides the light that these plants need to grow and produce the foods that we enjoy. I love me some salad. Do you? Ok amigos, ojalá que en este día, en este paseo virtual, hayan aprendido algo sobre nuestro Sol, la estrella más cercana a nuestro planeta Tierra. No solamente nos da energía de calor, pero también nos da luz. Hay muchos animales como los reptiles y como las plantas y ustedes que necesitan el sol para sobrevivir. All right, friends, so I hope you enjoyed this virtual field trip and learned a little bit about our wonderful sun, the closest star to our planet Earth. You guys now know that there's a ton of animals, including you, reptiles, mammals, birds, that all need the sun to survive, especially those plants that produce our food for us to eat. All right, guys, until next time, enjoy your day.
Thank you, Mr. Dominguez. And the question came in, what is the closest star to our sun? And the answer to that is Proxima Centauri. It is 4.2 light years away from the sun. And get your teacher to explain to you about light years. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. During this virtual field trip, students observed and described weather changes. Students also observed and described objects in the sky, such as clouds and the sun. Mr. Ramirez talked to you about weather tools, Mr. Monroe about seasons, Ms. Schramm about clouds and the moon, And Mr. Dominguez told you about the sun and the stars. Thank you for joining us. Teachers, if you would, go to www.tiny.cc/pk-2 feedback. We would appreciate it.